name is Rachel Kay. I am a single mother and an education professional. My plan right now is, since many of you either know me or tend to be more aware of what's going on, I will give you a few things that I'm thinking about in regard to running for school committee and this year in particular, and then just open it up to questions. So just a good question I was asked, and I don't see the asker here, but we can tell her later, was what's different? I ran 2 years ago. I got 2,100 votes, which in most years would have gotten me a seat on the committee. We had good turnout, so that's good, but it was enough that I felt like it was worth running again. And when I ran last time, I knew next to nothing. I knew, I just knew that I could do a good job, that I had the experience that would be valuable to our schools, but I knew nothing about campaigning, so I learned a lot. But in particular, the biggest thing I learned is I really like being involved in our community, and that I like talking to people, and I like learning things. And I went in with a few things in particular that I was very concerned about, and as I talked to people, those evolved. Both some that just altered, and some that, I had more nuance or more context for. And I think that was an important lesson for me. So when that was done, I started looking for more ways to be involved. I think I talked to Deb Peterson the day after the election in 21 and said, how can I help? And I got involved in working for the Fair Share Amendment. I've been on the board of our Special Education Parents Advisory, or CPAC. I'm a member of the Commission on Disability. I'm on the board of World and Watertown. So I've done a lot of these formal things as ways to get involved, but I've also done some of the informal things. Some of these are within the schools, is that I've been pretty active in talking about the equity audit and calling speaking with some of our current school committee members about it, speaking at meetings and the like. I've gone to most of the meetings for the comprehensive plan update. I watch, planning and zoning committee meetings when I'm trying to do busy work, so I'm getting to become a big nerd, but I went to all the vocational tech meetings, or not all, but most of them, or I watched them on Zoom afterwards. So I really made it an effort to be involved. I continue to enjoy being involved, and I continue to learn not just about our schools, but about how they fit into our larger community. So that is, for me, really what has changed in the past 2 years, and why I think I'm now even better positioned to make a positive contribution on the school committee. The other thing you may know is that I have a background in education. I have a PhD in educational research and measurement from Boston College. I work for MIT's admissions office doing research and data analysis. So educational data is something I do, and something we don't have anyone currently with an expertise on. There aren't a lot of us out there. So that it's something that I feel I really could add. I mean, as Kendra mentioned, the MCAS is something that we see all the time. We're also relying on a lot more assessments. Just a few specifics that I was thinking about this week. This past Monday's school committee meeting had the MCAS results released and discussed, and there's a lot there. It was pretty hard to take in, and I will confess some of the Zoom was a little muffled, so if I misquote anyone, I apologize. But the things I was most concerned about that I didn't really hear discussed in detail, one was the middle school, is that the middle school is, and I know it's a perpetual problem, I always hear that, but looking at those MCAS scores that are so much lower than the other grades. I mean, Hosmer made incredible growth last year. Lowell was doing pretty fine the year before, so they made a little growth and they're still doing great. Cunniff's doing okay, high school's made some progress, middle school nothing. And I feel like that's something we really need to think about, and how much of that is pandemic and how can we help with that, and how much of that is longer systemic problems. So that was one. The other one I looked at with a lot of concern were the data for students in special education, so students with disabilities. And in particular, there's a lot of comparing to the states, which, Watertown versus the state, which I don't think is necessarily a good measure, but in particular with the special education, I don't care what the state is doing if fewer than 20% of students in any one group are meeting expectations. And I think we need to really take a step back and look at that, because you know, I think the other thing that I know as a data scientist in education, of course, is that education data is people, and it's always more complicated. It is not, you can't just say, oh, 20% of our students are meeting expectations. No, every one of those students has a story. Every one of those students has a reason why they are or are not meeting those expectations. But I think our job is to take that data and to dig into it further and to really think about what can we as a school system do better. So those are a few things on my mind, but I am open to questions. Or I could just keep talking. Yes, Tony.
You mentioned in passing vocational education,
Yes.
and Watertown used to be part of Minuteman.
No.
It's no longer part of Minuteman.
No.
Currently, there's no, if somebody wants vocational training, there's no place for a kid in Watertown to go.
Right. To clarify, we never were actually part of Minuteman, but we were always able to send students there as a non-member district. So that's where it becomes tricky, and then they wanted to build the new high school, and then they had lower capacity. They also had increased demand, which is apparently a statewide problem. So that's, you know, so there are a number of factors, and now their current member districts have a waiting list to get into Minuteman, so we aren't even close. So unfortunately, we have missed that opportunity. They had made some efforts to reach out to us. We didn't move fast enough, and then they got a new superintendent, and et cetera. So that was unfortunate. I know that, and David may be able to speak more to this since he led the committee on this, but one thing that kept being brought up at these meetings was that Medford was a great option. And at that point, they were saying we could take up to 100 students a year, which is more than we would need. But our students don't seem to want to go to Medford. And I think what I found most problematic was that we were trying to ask why. So we had, for example, I think we had 12 students the year before last apply to Minuteman. None got in because they didn't have space. And there were many of us asking, where did they go? And we never got that answer. And that to me is like, well, you know, if the answer is they didn't think to apply to Minuteman or to Medford, then we get them that information. If the question is they don't like Medford for some reason, that it's too far, whatever, then we can address that as we need to. Anyway, so there, unfortunately, then Medford turned around and said, no, we can't take anybody in ninth grade, which is completely different from we can take 100. So we're in a bad spot. But it is something I'm definitely watching right now. I had mentioned before that Waltham in particular is building a new school, and I think that would be an amazing option. One, it's real close, but two, hopefully they will have some space and we will be able to do that. I know Minuteman's also expanding again, so it's possible that those spots will open up for us. But I think while we're doing these investigations, we really need to be able to get the information from our students of why they are or aren't making the choices they are. I know I worded that weird. Is that helpful? My babbling answer?
Well, I mean, you defined the problem.
Yeah, I don't see the solution right now, I will say that, other than to keep watching it. I mean, there are other programs in the state, they aren't especially close. So students would really have to want to go there. I know we have some programs opening in our own school, but I also know we have limitations because, well, one, we're in construction, but even after that, we have limitations on size, so.
I'm gonna ask you the same question about special education.
Yes.
When they identify that there is a need, child, how effective is it? Are they really following up and having core evaluations with all the specialists coming together and identifying what the needs are and prescribed curriculum, how many hours and so forth? Who follows up on that to make sure that that's being followed? Because for core evaluations, it ends up with a lesson plan for that child,
Right.
that these specialists. I have had a lesson plan that there were more hours in the day that they put, I mean, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, who follows up on it and to see if it is working and the value of it?
5 minutes, Rachel.
Okay. It depends. They do those evaluations. They have the meetings for the individual educational plan, and I think they tend to be pretty on time with those things. I mean, they're pretty regulated timing. The part that you mentioned that I'm concerned about is the following up that, is it happening? And I don't think that's always true. I think it varies by school, it varies by program. I think that's something that came up as the CPAC, the Special Ed Parents Advisory. We wrote a letter last year to the school committee after a year of talking with the administration about problems at the CUNF, because the CUNF in particular was having staffing problems, and therefore the services weren't being met, or things that were supposed to happen were being pulled. And I don't feel like a clear answer came up, and I think one of the frustrations was parents were saying, I don't even know, someone's left for maternity leave that's supposed to be working with my child once or twice a week, and no one ever told me. So I think we definitely have some communication issues that we have to deal with. And I think we've really got to identify who is responsible for that. And I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but I mean, I've got some ideas, but.
Who do you think should make the decision if a child should be taken from a public school to have a more, centralized curriculum for that child, or even a residential?
Right, I mean, I think that does come to the team, and in my experiences it does, the parents and the school, and it has to be a group decision. But of course, there's often disagreement, and that's where it gets complicated.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes?
I have one simple question which I would like to ask of all three new candidates.
Okay.
I don't need to ask the incumbents because I believe I know where they stand on this issue. My simple question is, do you believe in banning books, either in the library or in the curriculum?
No, I do not.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just making sure there's no loggers in disguise.
I have said a couple of times, because I keep being asked that, and I know there's a lot of fear because it's happening in some parts of the country,
Right.
and I can say, there are differences between the five of us, and I think, that it's worth getting to know them. That said, our differences are not the problems that other communities are facing. Thank the Lord. I mean, so I'm very pleased that don't have to worry about that issue.
Thank you.
Yes.
Rachel, where do you stand on the MCAS test?
On the graduation requirement
Yeah.
or the overall, I lean toward going away from it. I think I have some of the concerns that Kendra does. I think even if we get rid of it as a graduation requirement, it may be worth having the standardized test just to sort of track growth and et cetera over time. I think that's important. The one reason I'm reluctant to get rid of it is that students, again, special education students who have severe special needs are entitled to education until they're 22 or they graduate from high school. I'm a little worried without the MCAS that some students are going to be pushed through. I don't have particular worries about that necessarily with Watertown. I have worries about that across the state, but I think that's one of the reasons I really worry that those kids are going to lose out. So, yes.
I don't want to keep asking questions. You brought up special industrial arts more or less, and when I went to Watertown, I was in the college curriculum. They would not let me take an industrial arts class. We had three great teachers, Mr. Andrews in woodworking, who won the state competition every year until 2.5 eliminated it. We had had a great auto mechanic teacher. When they remodeled the high school the last time, they had the best auto shop in the state. And we had an electrical teacher that's excellent. Have you thought of hiring people to teach courses like that, to spur industrial art courses?
Yes, I know partly we are doing that. I cannot name the 5 vocational programs we're intending to have right now off the top of my head. I apologize. But there are 5 that we're intending to have, but it is also going to be such that the students, you can do the full program or you can take courses in it. So it's not going to be such that limited to certain groups, so I think that's good. Another thing I would love to see is us doing more partnerships with other schools. So if a student has a specific interest that we cannot meet, that we have opportunities. I know that's something we've been thinking, that's been being thought about.
The 3 of them tried to put a curriculum together where students could take all 3 of the courses for, like, I think they quarters and out of high school a long time, but, the school committee shot it down, so,
Oh, that's too bad.
yeah, it's in. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, I definitely, partly through this committee and partly really through talking with people, I've been thinking a lot about what can we do for these students who want this vocational opportunity, either as a full program or informally, just because it can be so valuable. And we know these kids can make a lot of money. I mean, that's a great option for a lot of kids. So, we'll figure it out.
You sound to getting closer, so
Yeah.
you picked up on it, yeah.
And I heard a little bell.
Great.
Yes. So,
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you.